Welcome, thanks for joining us. So as of today then, these fines for anyone that doesn't isolate having tested positive or having been told to do so. How will the police be getting the information to know who to keep tabs on?
Well, good morning. It's really difficult, and I would imagine that when we talk about intelligence, then that will be whether it's neighbours who are reporting on their neighbours or other ways that the police get information. The police aren't going to be knocking on the door of people that they suspect might not be complying. They might get information, the police might get information from the health agencies through the track and trace. There's a whole host of ways that they can get information. My real concern is managing the public's expectation, because of course my colleagues, those men and women, are out there trying to protect the public, and not only through this pandemic, but the normal day-to-day pressures of policing, the 999 calls that we're answering, the calls to assistance. My colleagues want to do the best they can, but we need the public to understand that we can't be everywhere all of the time. And, you know, I'm afraid that that message hasn't been as clear, maybe from government, that there are simply not enough police officers to do what is expected of them. It's incredibly difficult, and we need to educate the public as to that.
So just to clarify then on something that you said there, because you said police won't be knocking on the doors of people who they suspect have not been complying. Does that imply if someone phones up with a tip-off about a neighbour, that's a suspicion, isn't it, rather than the hard evidence that you get from track and trace information?
Yeah, look, it will all be about priorities, and if I can put that into context. So if you look at an average size town or a city, I think many members of the public understandably might think that in their town or city they've got literally dozens and dozens of police officers available at any one time. In reality, we've got a handful of police officers who are managing all of the demand across that area. So it's about priorities. Now, if we get a call that there's a suspected person who may have the virus and is not self-isolating, then that will go into the list of priorities. If we also then have a call that there's 50 people having a house party, then that would present more of a health risk. So I would imagine that we would probably go there first. And that doesn't include the 999 calls, the fights and so on. So it's about managing people's expectations. And to put this at the responsibility for policing, I do think it is unfair on my colleagues, because there will be those who want us to enforce every single aspect of this, use no discretion, no matter what the breach, you should have a fine. There's others who think we shouldn't be fining anybody. My colleagues are trying to find that middle ground, but we are damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. It's incredibly difficult.
It sounds from what you are saying like you don't expect many fines to arise from this new legislation.
I think with all of the legislation, let's not forget it's different in Wales and Scotland as it is in England, which complicates things even more because that muddies the message, shall we say. I think you will start to see more fines in different areas. So where there are willful breaches of the law, which we have seen, and we've already started to ramp up that enforcement, then I think it's right and proper that those individuals do get fined, and fined heavily, because there's no excuses. If people ignore the self-isolation, of course we will deal with it. But I think, you know, it's a new law. We will adopt the process that we've already followed, which is about trying to support and educate and inform and advise the public before we jump straight to enforcement. But enforcement is always an option. But I would also like to see the local authorities, the health and safety executives, other people, other agencies being able to help and support the police, rather than it all be put at my colleague's door, because we just don't have enough people to deal with what's being expected of us.
And as you've made very clear, you've got areas, many different areas now that you need to deal with in terms of new legislation, the curfew, the masks, breaches of isolation. We've seen pictures of people coming out of pubs at 10 o'clock now with that curfew and milling around. What's your perspective on that from the policing view?
Well, look, you didn't have to be a scientist to know that if you close the bars and restaurants at a given time, one cut-off time, everybody out the doors, and great, the bars and restaurants are completely empty, but the streets are full, and the handful of police officers are available will have to deal with that. Now, some people have said to me and colleagues, well, you should just encourage everybody just to go home in a nice, orderly manner. I'm afraid reality is when you mix alcohol with some people resisting, not the majority, but some resisting the rules that have been put in place, then all you need is one public order incident to kick off, and that will absorb all of the resources for policing. So we can't deal with the other dozens or if not hundreds of people who are out on the streets. So again, it's about managing expectations. You know, the public have to play their part, and the vast majority do. The vast majority of people want to keep each other safe, but some won't. We have to target those individuals, those who are willfully ignoring the rules. But if people think that my colleagues, police officers, are going to be outside every bar, every supermarket, there's going to be dozens of us lying in the high streets, I'm afraid they're mistaken, because we simply don't have those extra police officers that many people have said that we have.
Obviously, people might listen to you and think, well, then what you're saying is effectively it is going to be a free-for-all. Is it worrying if people get the message that the police simply don't have the resources to deal with all these new laws that have been brought in?
Well, I think I've certainly been quite consistent on behalf of rank and file police officers for some time now that, you know, our resources are really limited. And let me just reassure the viewers, the vast majority of the public are being sensible and doing the right thing. The ones who aren't, the ones who are having the house parties or arguing with the police about wearing a mask or whatever, they're the ones that are grabbing the headlines. Generally, we're dealing with them, but we can't be everywhere all of the time. So the public really do have to play their part. You know, it's been said many, many times we're in unprecedented times. We absolutely are. And this ever-changing landscape of the law changing is our new norm. And policing has to adapt to that. And I think my colleagues have adapted incredibly well to it. But it's tough and it's really difficult. And the only way we can make it work is if the public work with us. And they have been. That just needs to continue.
John Apter, Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales, thank you very much.
Thank you.